Welcome to a new episode of Dark Nature, the channel where we reveal the mysteries and curiosities of planet Earth. Imagine a place where the forest doesn't just surround you, but seems to stalk you. We travel to the Green Mountains of Vermont, beneath the imposing and dark silhouette of Glastenbury Mountain. It is the autumn of 1945, and a thick mist tangles among the pines like spectral fingers. Here, nature guards a secret that science has yet to explain. Our story begins with Middie Rivers, an experienced 74-year-old guide who knew these trails like the back of his hand. That morning, Middie was walking slightly ahead of his hunting group. He stopped for a second, caught a scent in the air, and with a simple, "Wait here," he stepped into a bank of fog rising from the ground. It was the last they ever heard of him. There were no screams, no gunshots, and no signs of a struggle. Middie Rivers simply vanished into thin air. More than 300 volunteers and soldiers combed the mountain with lanterns for entire nights, but the forest didn't return even an echo. The most expert guide in the region had evaporated without leaving a single footprint in the mud. But the mountain's hunger did not stop there. Only a year later, in December 1946, a young student named Paula Welden went out for a hike on the famous Long Trail. She wore a bright red jacket that stood out sharply against the virgin snow. An elderly couple saw her turn a corner of the rocky path in broad daylight. However, when they reached that same spot just seconds later, the path was empty. Paula had nowhere to hide. On one side was the abyss and on the other, solid rock. The panic was such that the FBI itself had to intervene, but not even J. Edgar Hoover's agents could find a single clue of the girl in red. The mystery reached an impossible level in December 1949 with the case of James Tedford. This war veteran was returning home on a crowded bus. 14 witnesses confirmed seeing him in his seat, sleeping peacefully as the vehicle rattled down the road. But upon arriving at the Bennington terminal, Tedford's seat was empty. His bags were still on the rack and a timetable lay on the cold leather, but James never got off the bus. How can a man vanish from a moving, closed vehicle without anyone noticing? Ancient legends of the area speak of a man-eating stone, a rock that traps the living and drags them into another dimension. What happened in October 1950 seems to confirm that something dark dwells in the heart of Vermont. An 8-year-old girl vanished in seconds from her father's truck, but this time, the mountain gave something back. Days later, in the middle of the virgin forest, rescuers found a piece of clothing from one of the victims who had disappeared years before. It was perfectly dry and folded on a rock, as if someone had left it there that very instant as a macabre trophy. The mountain does not just take lives, it seems to keep their memories. Who or what is returning these garments after so much time? The answer hides in the deepest shadows of Glastenbury. Don't forget to subscribe to Dark Nature and hit the notification bell so you don't miss our next mystery. Remember, the truth always hides in the shadows. After the impossible disappearances of the 1940s, fear took root in the very heart of Vermont. But what happened in October 1950 would change history forever. Little Paul Jeffson, only 8 years old, was playing near his father's truck in an area known as Somerset. It was a matter of seconds. His father turned away for a moment to tend to the livestock, and when he looked back, the boy had vanished. There were no footsteps, no cries for help, only the whisper of the wind through the pines. Hundreds of people joined the most desperate search the state had ever seen. The tracking dogs, trained to follow any human scent, began to act erratically. Upon reaching a specific point near a crossroads, the animals stopped dead in their tracks, whimpered in terror, and refused to move forward, as if an invisible barrier blocked their path. It was then that rescuers found a macabre trophy, a jacket belonging to one of the previous victims, perfectly folded on a rock in an area that had already been searched dozens of times. It was as if the mountain were playing with them, returning fragments of those it had swallowed years before. Only 2 weeks after Paul's disappearance, the mountain claimed its last known victim, Frida Langer. Frida was not an inexperienced hiker. While walking with her cousin near the Somerset Reservoir, she accidentally fell into a stream. She told her cousin she would head back to camp to change her clothes and to wait for her there. He watched her walk away toward the tents in broad daylight and across clear terrain. But Frida never arrived. What makes this case unique and terrifying is that 7 months later, her body appeared in a spot that had been meticulously inspected by rescue teams and volunteers almost daily. Her body was right there, in plain sight, in an area where hundreds of people had already passed. What force dwells within the Bennington Triangle? Some researchers speak of dimensional portals or a legendary creature known as the Bennington Monster, a being nearly 8 feet tall covered in hair that has been seen lurking near the peaks. Others suggest something more physical, forgotten mining tunnels and ventilation shafts hidden by vegetation that act as deadly traps. But no theory explains how a man vanishes from a moving bus, or how a piece of clothing remains dry after years of storms. Today, the town of Glastenbury is practically a ghost town. The houses are abandoned, and nature has reclaimed what was once hers. Modern hikers still report a feeling of absolute oppression when crossing the triangle, and some claim to have heard whispers that seem to come from the rocks themselves. The mountain is still there, vigilant, waiting for someone else to make the mistake of taking a wrong step. Because in the Bennington Triangle, nature does not forget, and its shadows are very hungry. Don't forget to subscribe to Dark Nature and hit the notification bell so you don't miss our next mystery. Remember, the truth always hides in the shadows. See you in the next episode.